It's
Yeah.
lots of fun. That's where we're at.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. We're gonna
No,
go ahead
don't
and
do
get
it.
started. Hi, come on
My
in.
daughter was
Grab a
joking,
snack.
no.
Yes. Oh, I love it.
No wonder
So
you
this
said
is
that.
out. It is. But now we're trying to get her your dinner.
Yeah. All right. So I just want to say welcome to our third of 3 workshops this semester on teaching writing to the international student. If you missed 1 or 2, they are available on FCI's website, innovatepark.org. So if you want to back up and look at part 1 and part 2, they're out there. Today's topic is specifically focusing on how to provide effective feedback for international students. So that's what we're going to do today. If you don't know me, I'm Amy Mecklenburg-Faenger, and I am the Director of Park Rights. And I'm joined today by Zephra Weber, who you'll see in a second, who is an ESL tutor at the Academic Support Center. Amy Jenkins, who's the Director of the English and Language and Culture Institute, ELCI, here at Park. And so we're going to talk today about some effective strategies for providing feedback to international students on their writing to help them improve their final work. So I'm going to just share my screen here for a second. Okay. So we kind of wanted to start with why feedback is important. And I think, many of us go, well, that's obvious. We provide feedback because we want our students to change their writing in response to it, right? In fact, there's other reasons that we provide feedback that are very important. Ken Highland, who wrote a great book called English for Academic Purposes, says beyond just giving immediate feedback for revision, comments also allow students to see how other people respond to their work. So this means it gives them a sense of audience. And one of the hardest things about writing is understanding how an audience who is not in your head reacts to your writing, right? So feedback gives students a sense of how does a not me read my writing, right? Comments also reflect teachers' beliefs about the nature of university education and the place of writing within that. So there's a whole set of ideological beliefs about writing and the purpose of education. It's encoded into the feedback. So of course, we have to think about what are the implicit messages we send about writing when we write feedback as well. Feedback also highlights university values and beliefs, the role we think that writing plays in learning, reflections on their identity as students, right? Whether they think of themselves or as successful or not successful, for example, could be affected by how we give commentary, as well as their beliefs and their own competence as writers, which can have an enormous outcome on how they perform, right? And of course, for those of you who teach in different disciplines, it also provides an introduction or guidance into learning discipline-specific writing techniques, some of which they may never have learned before. But they've never taken a political science course. They've never really seen the discourse, and they don't know how it works. And so your commentary helps them learn that discourse better so that they can perform it better. So we thought we'd start with some best practices that come from my field, which is writing studies. We have, 30, 40 years of data now on what makes good feedback. However, I just want to point out a lot of the best practices were really designed with native speakers in mind. Okay, so one of the things we're sort of exploring in this workshop is what do you need to do that is maybe different for an international or ESL student than you would for a native speaker, because there's things that work for native speakers that may not work for international students. Typically in writing studies, one of our best practices is we try to make sure that students still have agency over their writing. This means we don't take over and write for them. We don't insist that they follow the point we think they need to follow, right? We give them feedback and give them agency as writers and revise, right? And generally speaking, this is somewhat good advice for native speakers, right? That they need to learn to have control over their writing, and part of that is that you make the choices, right? Another sort of textbook piece of advice is we often depersonalize comments. Students feel very attacked when they get feedback on their writing, even when the feedback's neutral. I always tell my students, when you read my feedback, I think you read like this. Like this is how you imagine me. And I say, you need to read like I'm smiling. Read my comments like because that's what I'm doing. Because they have a tendency to read any feedback as negative because they're used to being red pinned to death typically. And so one of the strategies we often teach in workshops to help faculty depersonalize commentary is to talk about your experience as a reader as opposed to their actions as a writer. So you say, as a reader, I got confused in such and such a place, as opposed to this, you're confusing, right? Or to talk about the paper, sometimes we go, well, the paper seems to go off track here, right? And as we will see, this is great advice for native speakers, but the distancing move of that can actually confuse international students, as we'll see. We also teach teachers to ask a lot of questions. This sort of goes hand in hand with don't take over the paper. Don't tell them what they should think, but ask them questions that might help develop their thinking, right? And I do this a lot. I love to ask questions. Of course, I always have to tell my students it's not a game where I'm hiding the cookie. Like I've asked you a question and I know the answer, and can you find the cookie? I'm hiding the cookie. Because they're used to getting questions like that, where there is an answer and they're trying to guess it. No, I'm really asking a question, and I think if you try to answer it, it might take you somewhere. I don't know, but I don't know where it's going to take you, right? Another piece of textbook advice is to just prioritize. One of the things I see a lot, and teachers are just like, it's just too much. I can't. It's so long to give feedback. Because I look, and they're just trying to get feedback on everything. I say, you know, the research we have on writing kind of shows that students can really only concentrate on working in a couple of areas at one time. They really can't fix everything all at once, right? And I always say it's okay to let some things go, but you should prioritize what you want them to work on. And I always pick the stuff that I think is most important in terms of overall achievement. And I even tell students I do this. Right? I just had conferences today, and I said, okay, I picked 3 priorities for you to work on. But I need you to know I didn't comment on, you know, introduction, and I didn't look at your citations, whatever. You still need to work on those. We're going to just talk about the 3 most important things because they're going to, have to fix, right? And I just don't worry about things that I don't think we can fix right now. Right? I mean, I just don't. If it's not fixable right now, I might mention it, but we're not going to spend all our time on that. So I try to work on things that are achievable for the students because that keeps them from being demoralized. Another thing that I think is helpful is to separate revision and editing. And this might be one that we will see is really helpful for international students because there's a difference between revising for higher order concerns, content, right, structure of argument, and small editing, right? And if you think about like the editorial process, like professional publishing, you don't worry about fine polish at the beginning. You don't. You worry about it at the very last stage after everything else has been finalized. And the reason we do that in the publishing world is because there's no point editing a first draft because some of the stuff is just going to be gone. It's a waste of time, right? So I like to literally have separate phases. This feedback is about revision. We'll do that first. Then we do a second stage that's just editing. But even if you only have time to do one draft, separating for the students, do this first. This is revision stuff. And then maybe you could handle a couple of editing things. And I usually just pick things that are patterns as opposed to individual paragraphs. So I think that helps. I also think it helps to help students understand the difference between feedback for revision, those kinds of comments, and feedback that's about judgment or evaluation for a grade. And I do comment very differently, right? When I think they're going to revise, because then I'm focusing on very usable advice, giving them examples, being super specific, versus evaluation where I have to measure that against some set of goals on the paper. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to to Zephra, who's going to talk about, well, which of this advice works for non-native speakers and what doesn't.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to, like Amy said, we're going to look at what are some of the differences between what we say you can do with a native and then how does that translate to working with your non-natives, and just remembering that it really depends on the level of the non-native you're working with. Obviously, if you're working with a student that's closer to proficiency, you don't have to worry about the same things if you're working with more of an intermediate level student, upper intermediate. So one of the things that we experience and practice and research shows is that feedback to non-natives to be most helpful needs to be directed. And the key with that is it's actually saying, this is what you need to do. These are the changes that you need to make to improve. And I think that sometimes goes against this idea of agency. And so it's this difficult balance, isn't it? Because you don't want to take over the message, but at the same time, we're working with people who, if you've come to the other workshops, we've realized, okay, actually language level is a lot lower. They're not only learning language, they're having new experiences with the way that universities work in the US, the things we expect from them. And so there are a lot of things that they don't know, and they need us to tell them. And I think that's the key, is that to really help, you have to give the instructions. This is what I need you to do. So for example, a directive feedback, preview your points here, okay? Compared to expressive, I've stopped reading here as I don't see a flow of argument. So that gives more of an opinion. This is how the reader is affected, but your student might still be left wondering, okay, so how do I fix that? Because a lot of times when you're dealing with language issues, they actually don't know. Okay, you might say, for example, I don't see any analysis. Okay, and then the student's question is, well, how do I do that? How do I show that to you? So if you can direct them, and that's really helpful. Another thing is specific, well-focused, and explicit. And I think that goes hand in hand with directive, but the more vague a comment, the more interpretation students are left to do, the more easily they misinterpret it, the less likely they are actually to know how to act on that comment. So what do you mean? How do I interpret it? And I think that the next point, different cultures have different writing expectations, is key here, because you may be making a comment and you assume that any American student will know what you mean. They know it's expected. That may or may not be true, depending on the background. But it's very possible that your student from China doesn't know that that's an expectation. And so for you to say directly, this is what we need you, this is what I need you to do. This is the thing you're missing, you need to put it here. And when you're addressing issues like plagiarism, for example, being explicit is really important. And we've attached a study at the end that you can read, but there's actually a really interesting study. It was of a small number of students, but they looked at how teachers gave feedback on plagiarism. And in general, it's very delicate, and we're worried about saying anything like suggesting that maybe you're plagiarizing. So, is this from somewhere else? Comments like that aren't so explicit.
Yes, asking the question, which seems like good practice for the native speaker.
Exactly, asking the question, and then they went to the students to find out how the students had interpreted it, and they did not connect the dots that the teacher was actually accusing them of plagiarism. And actually, they just repeated the same thing in their next essay because it wasn't explicit enough. And so an example in that situation is, this is copied from another source. You need to put it in quotation marks, and then we've also shown you what quotation marks are. Because, it's going that step further and really being explicit and specific. And I think to do that as well, like with the analysis one, this is a common one for us, right? There's no analysis. Okay, so you need to add analysis. For example, in this paragraph, you say, blah, blah, blah. You need to tell me how that applies to this theory that we've learned in class. And it is more work, right? Because you have to think, okay, what do I mean? I said analysis, but what do I actually mean? Like, what's the scaffolding I can provide them to step into that? But then it can really help them to take those next steps. So as when we do our practice today, we're going to be looking at how to make our comments directive, provide scaffolding so the student can actually take that step. Because a lot of times they don't know how to do it, and they don't know what you're expecting.
Can I ask a quick question? Does it make sense to, or would you advise us to add a comment? Sometimes I have said in American culture, we view ideas as property. So when you use someone's idea, you need to put it in quotation marks. So I'm giving the explanation of why I want you to put it in quotation marks. Do we do that, or is that just overwhelming?
I think that's a really good question. It's a little bit of an abstract idea.
Yeah.
Because I think they would have to then what do we think? What does property mean? How do you view property? Do they connect property directly with ownership? I think for a lower level, that would be difficult to connect with. Not that it's not a bad thing to do, but the more direct, the better, straight to the point. It might be, especially with plagiarism,
It's just a big deal in speech. It's a big
yes.
deal.
Yes. So maybe something like, this is copied. You can even say, I think this is copied. You're not sure, but you can run it. You can run it through something to see. And then this is copied. You need to put it in quotation marks. If you don't understand how to do this, please come and talk to me. Yeah. You can also use the word plagiarism. Here's the thing. I work in the Academic Support Center. It's amazing. Students don't know what that word means. And you'd think they would look it up. Like, my feeling is that your teacher puts this big word on your paper. This looks like plagiarism. And you're like, well, what is plagiarism? I'll just look it up. They'll come and I'll say, well, what is plagiarism? I don't know.
I know, we're like, oh boy.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind. Just keep in mind that if you use the term plagiarism, they may not know what it is. And they may or may not look it up depending on that. But they will know this is copied. This is copied. You cannot copy from something else.
I think you talking about intellectual property, like that's
Yeah.
specific to like performance or like speech and some delivery type of thing. So intellectual property is almost like a terminology that's used in your field. And so I mean, I think if it's something that you've talked about in class or that they've read about, that this is considered intellectual property, then it might be good for you to reinforce that in your comment.
Yeah, that's true.
But like Zephra's saying, if it's, plagiarism, sometimes they, it just doesn't register because that's not something that was maybe talked about in their class. And so it doesn't actually give them a directive, but some students may look at this comment and say, okay, I'm putting it in quotation marks. Why do I have to do that? And if they come back to you and ask the why, I think, it's fair to give them the explanation, but it can bog down maybe some of the feedback too if you're constantly explaining why you're telling them to do something. But I think, that terminology, I certainly understand the importance of it in your field.
It's actually key for university learning, that idea. And it is something we're looking into. And I've actually encountered a lot of master's level students that don't have that idea. And it's amazing. They'll be in several classes, come to me, we'll be looking at their work, and I'll point out, this appears to be copied or face to face. And then they're like, well, what do you mean? And they're in a master's level program with actually no concept of intellectual property. And at that point, so I'm looking at developing something where international students come in and have a course. That's a great question. Yeah, because it's very cultural dependent on how serious we take the issue. So I think that's good. And so that plagiarism is one small example of the importance of being explicit and not making them guess. So just some practical tips. If the chat will come up, right? I just want to make sure. I should have somebody in the chat comes in the chat. I just wanted to make sure that it will show.
Yeah, I'm monitoring it.
Right. So practical tips for when you're sitting there with the paper: include enough information so the student doesn't have to guess what you mean and what they should change. So we've all seen the infamous question mark, like question mark. Okay, well there's going to be a lot of interpretations of this. and they may not, probably won't be able to get what you want. Delay addressing sentence level errors until significant content organizational issues have been resolved. I think that's really key. Because as Amy was saying, a lot of the sentence level errors, when the content is changed, is completely irrelevant. So it's really important that we're focusing on content. This is a very practical. Make sure your handwriting is clear, because
They can't read cursive, just type.
yeah, it's typing is very good. Yes, because there are lots of there's some cultures where they don't learn to read cursive English. Cursive. Yeah,
They're
so-
not taught anymore. I mean that literally. They're not taught how to write cursive anymore. They literally can't read it.
Yeah,
I'm
so
not being facetious.
so you have to think, like, if it's not your first language, when an E looks strange or weird, then it's just that much harder. Write clearly, print, or use the computer. Be as direct as possible. Like we said, vagueness can lead to misinterpretation. Avoid and minimize hedging. And hedging is when you use a word or a phrase to make what you say sound more polite. So in English, I think I've explained this to you guys, but this is the way English works to make things more polite. We don't really have a polite form, like some languages have a polite form, but we add more words. The more words we add, the more polite it is. Like, pick that up. Can you pick that up? Would you mind picking that up? Is it okay if you take a minute and pick that up? So we do that with our students because we should. We're trying to be polite, right? But the more layers we're adding, the harder it can be for them to interpret it. And
It
so
distances them from the
Very
direct
good.
meaning.
exactly. So you say, for example, you need a bit more information. Well, we're saying a bit more because we don't actually want to offend them, and like we really mean you need more information about this. A bit sounds like a little. They're like, oh great. I appreciate your use of bullet points, but in this type of paper, it's inappropriate. So you lead with appreciate, and the student's like, yes, nailed the bullet points, because they're not actually familiar with that structure that I appreciate. I'm gonna then come and say, but don't do it. You may want to think about going to the academic support center. Go to the academic support center. And then give student concrete examples from their writing. I think that's really important. Like I said, you said this. Instead, say this. You said this. Can you say more about this? And then finally, which we talked about in our previous session, avoid idiomatic language, complex referencing, and complex sentences. So everything we talked about in the last session is very relevant here. And for those of you that didn't attend, it's just being aware of what language will our students have access to. And the more simple your language is, the easier it is for them to understand. That's really important. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how to avoid being distracted by the sentence level errors. Let me preface this with one thing I do is help students with dissertations, not here, or do we call it this in the US, but 30-page papers written by non-natives that I have to read about complex topics, and it can be incredibly painful and very difficult to not be distracted by so many errors. So I've had a lot of practice on how can I avoid getting sucked in by that. And I want to use an analogy here. My dad was an artist, and he taught, he's an oil painter, and he taught painting, and he talked about the importance of value. So for example, if you look at this wall, you see there's light and there's dark. But when we're looking at it, 100% clear vision, actually we see so many things. We see the curtain, we see these lines, we see so many details. I look at your face and I see the details. But I'm distracted about the structure. The details distract me from the structure. So he says to students, squint. So if everybody squints for me and looks over there again. Squinting blurs your vision, and it brings about, simplifies it, and you're less distracted by detail. So I think for us when we're reading, it's not so much squinting as it's relaxing your brain. Because as you're reading, it's the way our brains work when we're fully in focus. You see some kind of funny sentence structure or grammar thing, and it triggers our brain like, whoa, something's not right. I need to figure this out. So I've got an example here from a lovely student in finance that I could use this. And when you read that first sentence, what's the first thing that kind of happens? You feel like. By the way, Ben's Cookies is this brilliant British American cookie shop. So good. But what does your brain do like right away? You start reading.
I start to rearrange to try to make sense.
Yeah, that's your natural instinct. That's what's going to happen. We're kind of wired that way. So what you need to do when you're working with writing that is really written with, I don't know if I want to say error or if it's not structured correctly, is you have to turn that part of your brain off and say, hey, relax, read it for context. So if we can practice that here, so just go ahead and have a look at this. And as your brain starts firing, going, what? Where's that verb? I can't handle this. Turn that part off. Blur your vision in your brain and see if you can find this writer's main points. And at the end of it, let me know if you think that the main points are clear.
I think it's the first sentence that like sort of makes you stop,
Yeah.
right? And then, but once you keep going, you sort of get, oh yeah, all right, I see what the student's doing here.
Yeah. And at first you're like, but then, and that one makes you want to fix it. The franchising gets confusing. But if you go, oh, she's talking about franchising this company. Okay, relax your brain. Stop worrying about the other stuff, and you can find her main point. So we're going to really be practicing that today of reading for content so that we can give valuable feedback first and develop them in our subject area and as writers rather than getting distracted by all that sentence level stuff. So I think it's key to read for content first. Read from beginning to end without stopping to correct. Because as you correct, you're bringing your focus there. So you have to resist it. Even for me, I've been doing it for a long time and I still have to go, wait a minute, stop, Zephra, what are you doing? Get to the end of this.
I often tell people in workshops when I teach feedback, read without a pencil in your hand. Go find a nice chair. Like read, not like teachers, we're perverse readers. You don't read normal, like when you read to grade or get feedback. Like go like you're gonna sit and read a novel. You read for meaning, you don't read to be nitpicky. And try reading a student paper that way. Just for the pleasure of finding the meaning. You read it so differently. And I think it changes how you react to it. So I always try to do a first read with pencils in hand. Read the whole stack of papers. Just read it.
And I think that can be really key when you're working with non-natives where it's hard. Sometimes it's really not easy when you're dealing with complex topics anyway to get through it. But when you do, when you start to relax a little bit, you can find, oh, okay, I can follow the argument, or maybe actually you find you can't follow the argument. Well, now you've found something that's really valuable. So I think that's really, really important. So we're going to practice that. Here's a big chunk. This is the same writer. She was doing a master's in business. I'm going to let Amy go ahead and read this one. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to continue to relax our brain with our first read through on this one and just think about what is the main point that the student is trying to make here. So I'll give you a minute here to read through it. Okay, so who has an idea about the main point?
adaptation of corporate social responsibility.
Okay.
Consider that's on the right track.
That the student is trying to make about the corporate social
Adaptation. Using
Because it's still worthwhile from a profitability standpoint, even though legally and conceptually maybe difficult.
Good relaxing.
Are you
It's the first time anybody's ever said that to me.
So, all right, now in thinking that this is your student's paper and you now kind of know the point that they're trying to make, how would you provide feedback regarding that main point? So you want to address that because they haven't really made it super clear here. So how would you give them some feedback about addressing that issue? And think about the things that Zephra talked about being directive, explicit, not hedging your comments, making it in a way where you're giving them something tangible to do to make a correction. So go ahead and maybe on your piece of paper or notebook, just write down what your comment would be to the student. And feel free to revise it. I oftentimes write a comment and then I'm like, okay, I still was edging. Okay, I'm not being clear enough about exactly what I want them to do. So feel free to edit your comment until you have it in a place where you feel like you're doing all the things that you should be doing. Online shared her comment. Your ideas on CSR and global economy are current with business practices today. So this is really hard. Yeah. So what are you asking the student to do, Kathy?
Or are you happy with what they've come up with?
I mean, as someone who works with students a little different than I'm not usually grading writing, I agree that this is challenging. But I thought, in general, that they needed to get to their main point more quickly, that they had too much, that they needed to cut the amount of, that they needed to cut content down. It just seemed like there was a lot of stuff we were throwing in there, and it was easy to get lost on
more direct thing would be get to your main point more quickly.
And would you be able to think of a way to then show her how to do that? If the student, you say get to your main point more quickly, well, how do I do that?
Right. When I read this, my first read was, "Ugh, what's the main idea?" I was like, I understand what the student's trying to say, but they didn't state the main idea really of the paragraph until almost at the end they start to touch on the main idea. But by then we've kind of gotten lost and are a little muddled about the main idea. And so, yeah, I think, you want to give them some directive of how to do that. So we need a comment that will maybe point them in that direction or give them something specific to correct here.
So I'll be brave. I try to explain everything. Anyway, is that a paragraph needs a clear statement of your argument at the beginning. Make your second sentence say, CSR is important for corporations to adopt because it affects the business profitability.
Excellent. I love
Yeah.
it. It's
Is
very
that okay?
directive. You've told them.
Okay.
So thank you for being brave, first of all. Second of all, this wasn't easy for us either when we were meeting. And third of all, when we were meeting, Amy said, well, I don't want to tell the student, I don't want to put words in their mouth.
Mhm.
And Zephra and I both looked at each other and were like, but they need it. They are struggling with it, right? And so sometimes you just have to give them the language, right? We can read this and get the gist of what they're wanting to say, but they clearly haven't figured out how to say it. And so unlike a native speaker where you don't want to put words in a native speaker's mouth because they probably have their own ideas about it. Not to say that our international students don't have their own ideas either, but they just don't have that language to say it. And so, sometimes I liken it to younger students or your children maybe that haven't learned how to express their feelings about something, and instead they express it with a behavior because they don't have the words yet to express that feeling. And so that's sometimes how I feel about our non-proficient students, is that they have language, they have the words, they understand all these words, but they don't know how to get them together to say what they're trying to say.
Especially concisely.
Yeah.
Conciseness is very difficult. It's a long time to develop.
Exactly, and especially in making a main idea point in a piece of writing. And so, I know that there's sometimes it feels conflicting in you to be that directive and give them that language. But if the student, if you gave them the wrong, or if you understood their idea incorrectly, they'll tell you. They'll say, thanks for giving me that sentence, but actually that's not what I'm trying to write here. And then that could give you an opportunity for a conference with them or to have a conversation. But in a written feedback situation, what you did there is great, just very directive. You gave them the language.
I feel like I need two sets of skills. I need my skills for native English speakers, and then I need my skills for non-native.
Those are workshops for the
But I think there's still crossover because,
Yeah.
I think I see a lot of comments on papers that are directive and not even for our native speaking students. So sometimes they are a little more direction than not that you have to take over, but it's too much indirection means they don't.
I don't think you do need two sets. I mean, you need another set of skills, just like when you're differentiating for anything. It's addressing, okay, this is a different way of learning or a different skill set. How can I help support them? And it takes it takes a long time to develop.
I don't know, like when I give feedback, I do like a two-part form, and I use it for this as well, where I'll tell the student for this, I said, reading this paper leaves me with the impression that there is a clear value added to CSR, even though the relationship between globalization and law may make it difficult. So for me, I try to tell the student, like, this is what I think you said. A lot of times that in and of itself is illustrative because either they see my recap and they go, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Or they read it and go, no, not at all. And then it was like, well, then we have this other problem. But then the second part is like, in this one, I said where I get confused is how companies should specify or should specifically alter their understanding of CSR. I suggest using a specific keyword, concept, or piece. So like here, you have to be course specific. So I tell them, if that's what you want to argue, textbook chapter over here had that concept, you should go talk about that. And then explicitly note how this overcomes the problem you identify in reglobalization law. So, but normally I know more about it than this, so I can give them like alternatives. And usually my feedback is like, you could mean this, this, or this. If you're going to do that, here's what you should go look at. If you're going to do that, here's what you look at. Then they at least have somewhere to go look, and I don't feel like I'm telling them what they have to go fix. Like I'm giving them like avenues.
But if you're, so look at what you wrote through, which I think content-wise is really good, through that lens of that non-native speaker. Jack, for that, can you see anywhere that they might get hung up thinking about some of the points about the directive specific examples in the language?
Well, the thing that I scribbled in as you were talking was that I said the thing that they mentioned, because it says in recently, so they are mentioning what I'm talking about, right? They just aren't elaborating it.
They're trying to reference something.
So my original feedback was like theory-based and like you should go read the textbook, but then after hearing yours, I scribbled in that. What is that? Like that part? Tell me what that is. Like in recently, most businesses are starting adopting CSR legislation, which I mean is policies and orchestrating. So give me an example, right? Like elaborate what that is.
Yeah.
Or say where that idea came from, you know, as if they're going to say.
And I think the tricky thing will be that's beautifully written feedback, but it is pretty complex. Structurally, it's pretty complex. So like, is there a way to get there to the main point you're making more directly?
Like I sat here and like this is what I do, right? Like I'm an English teacher, but I sat here and read through this paragraph, and granted, like you all have been, this is not my area, so like I don't understand the concept really. So you know, trying to get feedback is extra difficult. But I kind of went the same route as Laura. I like my feedback started with like reorganize this paragraph. Start with, and then you know, like
What did you choose? Did you share what you chose?
well, I hadn't even gotten that far. Like I like because I was like staring at this paragraph. I was like, what? I don't know. I don't know what they need to start with. But like that's what I was thinking they needed, right? Like they need a list of this is the points they need to make in this order.
Yep.
Right?
Well, right. You would start with your main idea and then make your points to it. And I think, you know, here the main idea isn't even clear. So this kind of goes back to earlier, you know, in prioritizing, right? So when you give that feedback, I mean, there's a million things we could say about this really small little snippet here, but we have to prioritize, right? And generally you start with that main idea and then the details with it. And so, and you know, no matter what the content is, they have to get that in there to make themselves understood. And so
and you know, so my typical response is like I give something good and then I give the bad. So like could I say, you know, like for non-native speakers, can I say you've got great ideas here, but you need to reorganize this paragraph, do this, this, and this? Or does it confuse the situation when I start with the good
I
stuff?
think that's confusing because you're saying it's both good and bad. And I think it's great to give positive feedback. I would choose a spot that's positive and doesn't need any revision to give them a positive comment about. And I do try to do that to balance it out with my students too. But I try to choose something that says, you know, that I don't need them to fix it all, that I'm just willing to give a positive praise about, and just leave it at that.
And one of the, I think, one of the ways I structured, now this is end feed, this is feedback when I'm giving the final feedback, you know, the main point feedback, I don't know what we call it, at the end of the paper, is to make it really clear. I do start with my students a lot. I do start with, you know, Tom Tam, this student, you have identified like that, the good things. And then I actually put to improve, colon, and then I list in bullet points exactly what she needs or he needs to do, because I don't want them to get confused when they're reading my main thing. I want them to see those, you need to change this to improve or whatever you want. And it's really divided just to make it clear. And I think if you wanted to look again at Kathy's comment, because she did give positive feedback about that paragraph. And I think, and it is true, because if you don't know the concepts, it's trickier. So giving the positive feedback is, there's nothing wrong with positive feedback. So you're balancing, does this student have a real problem with paragraph organization? Is it enough of a problem that I want to address it?
Right, is every paragraph in their paper like
Right.
this? And so then this is your priority, like they need to get this and then apply it to the rest of the paper.
Is there, the thing I'm sitting here thinking about right now is that I'm of the opinion that at least in the social science, we do a really horrible job teaching writing. Because because we don't share with students our own writing process. Like they see a polished journal article and think that someone sat down with a cup of coffee in 3 hours and wrote that, right? They don't see months or years of work and rejection letters and editors. So like, to me, I take my stuff, like my hand typewritten stuff and my marked up revisions, and I show them to my students, and I say, like, that's what's between you and this thing that I assigned you that I wrote. It's not skill, it's like a process, which I think in a lot of ways helps to it would probably allow you to shift away from the sentence level stuff by saying, look, everybody's guilty of that, I'm guilty of that, there's the one right there. But would that be daunting to an international student to see that? Because it's already tough enough when they think that it's something that we innately have, to be shown that no, you hear me talk, you see my writing, and that's how much work it takes to refine that. Would that be daunting? That's because for my native speakers, they love it because it sits in their head and they're like, oh wait, no, it's going to take time. And when he calls out my sentence structures, it's not because he doesn't like me, it's because this is part of the writing process. But I'm wondering how that would, because that's what I would do. I wouldn't, if I had a class where I had several students like this, my first reaction would not be to sit down with each of their papers and write a bunch of feedback about editing and reorganization. It would be to do something like that, like to show them this is a process, realize that you're going to engage in that process soon, and then today we're going to talk about this other thing. But I'm thinking here like that would just be terrifying.
Well, I think it's fair to say that it's a process, and you know, for students to realize that you don't expect them to have it right the first time. I think there's a comfort in that, and you know, in a way of kind of acknowledging that there is going to be some drafts for them. You know, I don't think that in and of itself is daunting for a non-native speaker. You know, I think ultimately they just need that directive of, okay, how do I make it get to that end point? What do I need to do? Tell me. Because they're never going to come up with it on their own, or they would have done it the first time.
Yeah.
It won't go there.
I guess being explicit, not only that there is a process, but what the different steps of that process is and outlining it. Because I'm thinking, you know, the same thing as it relates to working with international students on research-related things. It's not enough for me to talk about, you know, search is iterative, and you know, I might try different combinations and saying like, okay, this is what I start with, but then like I see this word here, so now I'm going to try these two words together and actually working them through, and not just saying I'm going to search a bunch of different times, but then showing them, okay, this is how I start, and then the actual steps, and then they hopefully would get, you know, some of that in there and try
them the introduction or something. So here's my first draft of the introduction. Here's my 20th. I mean,
Not a whole paper,
Yeah.
maybe just a section, but then, yeah, being very explicit, like, okay, so after I draft my introduction, the next thing I did was this, or, you know, maybe I give it to this person and they look at, like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to the prioritization stuff too. And if you're scaffolding that for them through their drafting process, what I've often done with my students is I'll say, today we're going to look at your paper through the lens of ideas. And then the next day, we look at their paper through the lens of this. And each time they're looking for that one prioritized item to really fix so that it's not overwhelming, like all these different drafts and like all these different things happening in each draft. But yeah, that's great.
And I think that the challenge is for us is to identify the missing piece. And that is really a challenge because going back in some senses to the basics of writing to identify, well, why was this not conveyed? How do I do that? And that takes a real analysis of what a good product is, what piece is missing in this. What is that in the writing? How do they get there? What's an example of that? And I think that's why good feedback can be challenging and time-consuming, especially when you start looking like that for non-natives, because you're not used to necessarily finding the next step. But maybe the more you see it, and the more you go, oh, well, I'm seeing here they're not putting the main point at the beginning of your paragraph. Okay. You know.
Yeah, I mean, there could be lots of things going on. It could be an organization. It could be, you know, understanding content, or it could just be a language issue. Syntactically, they're always garbled in this so that it means. So yeah, you kind of have to look at it holistically, also prioritize which things you can comment on. I try to pick things that you referenced earlier are patterns, you know, that we can fix. But okay, I think that wraps up that one, and I'll just go.
Okay, so we brought you a full paper.
Obviously, it's
Oh my
fairly,
gosh.
it's fairly short, so don't freak out.
Last workshop I come to.
I think this is part 3.
No, you've done so well in a paragraph.
Nothing about homework.
I'm not coming to part 4.
Here, we don't want you to leave, Stacey, without your copy of the paper.
It's okay, I get plenty of papers. Thank you, ladies.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I gotta go teach.
Oh, good luck.
And Kathy, the paper we're looking at is in that Google Drive link that I just put in chat for you. So you should be able to just click it and pull up the paper. Let me just give you. I'm revealing everything. For a technical writing course, this is their final first draft. I don't want you to take that away. The assignment was an 8 to 10 page full report using technical report format. This is a formal report. Their assignment was to pick a company that they were familiar with, and I try to encourage them to use one they've worked for, they have insider knowledge, to find some technical problem within that company that needs addressing, to explain what the problem is, and do research that would help them to best the solution. Right, so it is a problem solution style report. And then they had to write an 8 to 10 page report. You have the neat model for the ancillary part. Title page, so I can copy that. So this was his first attempt at developing the body portion, right? We just want you to read through it. You'll see it pretty short. So you're gonna have to be able to read it through.
I think you got pulled out.
Oh, no. Well, you can show us.
Yeah.
We missed that piece.
Yeah, you're gonna, there's a disjunction. Sorry, I don't, the copier skipped a page apparently. Kathy probably has it, however.
Kathy, save us. Do the work, please.
You're responsible for page 3.
Actually, I think it's page 2. It's mostly a picture, and I think you can see that it's trying to take a whole.
It's not big enough.
As a
Picture
rhetorical
continued
function.
on page. On page 2.
It'll take us a while to read it.
Yeah.
What we want you to do is just read through the paper. So we're going to practice non-perverse reading, regular reading. And I want you to just read through it and, think about what are the most important things you need to do to get drafted. Keep in mind, this is a longer process. The actually has to be drafted. We only have to think about it. What does he need to do to get to the second draft? We have to polish draft later. We don't have to worry about that. Right? And be thinking about what should we prioritize in our feedback that would be the most useful for getting to that draft. Picture, by the way, is of an airplane.
All right, apparently, because it had cool. It was entertaining.
I think actually that's on the ground somewhere. And I'm like, that seems like
That's a requirement.
Globalization.
Have to cover
Except for
globalization.
poli-sci, because we have to But it was in that thing.
Hey, Kathy, you might want to mute your mic.
No, that makes it work.
But I do love hearing your dogs.
It's not cat, it's probably the Russian spies.
Oh no, Alexa's out there.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's another note. I'm not.
Oh, cheesy? Should I bring this over?
worst things you can become addicted to.
Yeah, and it's good for marketing because it kind of keeps you awake.
One of my professors in grad school used to make us scare pop popcorn. He just brought it to class. It was horrible. This is so much better. He's a good man.
Let's try this. Sorry. Everything.
I know, yeah, I know, but so it's like this multi-step process of me identifying ones where it's like essentially bite off the hard bits that might choke him and get the little soft pieces, and I just get ready to get smack in the back or down like this.
Yesterday we're walking around and he sees all of the food, so then he's reaching and pointing, and I try to give him things and spit stuff out too. That's all that is.
That's
Have
just
you read the whole thing?
yes. Very corrupt.
Taskmaster.
Very
And
corrupt.
stuff on the localization point.
I have read
We can participation grades. Just come out of the final.
That's what I said, you know, you just get grades.
It's actually not that bad to me. Like,
The students going back and forth in many ways, right? The corruption is in like each paragraph. So,
so you're saying it's repetitive.
well, it's not repetitive because it's a separate point each time, but it's the themes are sort of, instead of segmented out, they're intertwined with each other. So is this the format the student has to use, or is this
These
one
headings?
that they thought up?
These are his heading choices, right? So
Okay.
Part of
Oh.
the challenge of the assignment is to figure out how you give information in what order, how you label your sections. So in this case, you might want to focus on concentrating all that stuff in one heading.
Yeah, so it's like separating out corruption and technical issues rather than, breaking it into these individual pieces and then addressing corruption and technical issues in each of these smaller paragraphs. That's where
I would have said problem solution, organizational map. All your problems up first, all your solutions down second section.
And I think the challenge is when you read things like this, and you go, well, it isn't that bad, or like our other student education, that's the main point. But we still want them to improve, we want them to take that next step. So now, we feel like that's an issue. Okay, should we all try to write, what would your final comment be? What would this?
I like Laura's solution. Use problem solution.
Yeah.
Start by putting all the problems together at the beginning. Maybe you'll have a couple of sections, but.
And then move on to the solution.
And then how, thinking of that, okay. I think we should go ahead, let's try to write the words down ourselves and see if we can, then, by we sort of, am I giving specific enough examples for them to follow that? Have I simplified what I'm saying enough? Is it clear they need to change it? Let's see if we can actually.
So we're gonna do an end comment.
Was there one end and one? Yeah.
We were gonna do one
One
more
end
comment,
comment
but I
addressing
don't think
priority. Let's do
we
that.
won't have time, I think.
Yeah, okay, let's
Let's write an end comment that addresses what you think you guys. When we talk about organizations, I'm sure you saw other things. So
Oh,
if you
yeah.
found something else that's a priority, by all means. Don't listen to me.
mindful
Stacy went
time.
and no one was there. She came back and reported that. And I was on my way up. And my mom was there.
That's the week I was in San Francisco and Monica was supposed to be there and Monica.
We didn't come.
So
I-
Kathy,
I even
Kathy's
checked in
given
with her.
her,
She's like, yeah, I'll be there.
her, is it Kathy? Yeah. And. Mhm. And I want to look at the one about the transition. Because I think that's a lot of times transition is a really big challenge for maybe all students, but non-natives especially because it is not an easy thing to transition.
Yeah.
So if you offer that advice, then from what we're learning today, if you can think, okay, how would I show them how to transition?
Probably find a good example of transition and explaining not only this is the transition and this is why it works well. It's because, here is what you had here and it provides the connection to what you're talking about here. So giving them something that they can reference that shows how a transition works and then talk about, okay, how would we have a core paper, how would we connect these
Well, and I think,
It's like a really high order skill.
and then it. Transition could be your direction. Well, I think a good way, something I've done, because I've looked a lot at transitioning with students, and it is actually, again, what Amy was saying, is providing them with how you do it. So you need to work on the transition between the current correction and proposed solutions. For example, try this. Okay, and then that, then takes some thinking about what you're actually meaning by wanting transition. What do I want to see here? Because I can almost guarantee you they can't come up with it. This student can't come up with it. But he needs to have his awareness raised about transitioning. He needs to take a step towards being able to do it. And I think actually saying, try this.
Yeah, giving them the transition maybe for the first transition opportunity in the paper. And then at the next time when they meet at the transition, highlight that and say, now apply what I provided you in the other paragraph here. And then they might be able to do it themselves that next time.
This is a multi-draft process.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is the first draft. So my feedback, I didn't touch on any of that stuff because the conceptual rearrangements were have to go first. So I told the student, like, you need to reorganize this paper more clearly under subheadings that what does it consolidate? Let me scratch. Your key points. See, I'm learning. And I actually give potential and topics like the inefficiency of Galileo versus potential benefits of Amadeus, the relationship between the current check-in system, employee corruption, and damage to company property, and a specific plan for moving to Amadeus, which includes a direct argument for purchasing necessary equipment. Because he also has that thrown-in point at the end where it's like they're gonna have to do, like he says, we haven't done it even though we own it, and then there's another paragraph, and then it's like because we haven't done it because we have to buy more things, and it's like, well, then you need to put those two together and say it's totally worth. Because then once you have the student, once they disentangle those points and they start looking linear, they start following a linear trajectory on the page, then transition talk gets much easier because you can say, hey, now we can talk about scrubbing some of these and putting in transition.
Right.
So that's where I would have started.
I like the idea of giving the headings. How does everybody else feel about giving the headings? Like it too much?
I don't know. I totally would.
Yeah, I'm like, no,
would.
these are your
My
points. They're
work
good.
would be to give the headings.
Because to my mind, you're not colonizing their paper either. Because you're not telling them how to organize their thoughts. You're still giving them lots of agency on how they articulate their thought. You're just telling them, like, those are already there. I'm not telling them to put anything in there that's not already there.
I just said reorganize the paper, place all those, well, I said you identify a number of problems and clearly explain the solution, which is good. I was trying to think about something. And I said reorganize the paper to place all those problems in the initial
discuss the
Discuss.
relationship between these two things. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't, my international students, my sense is tingling and saying they're not going to be,
I like the
like, just
clarity.
talk about it.
The clarity is,
Yeah.
is excellent, isn't it? So then I guess it's, and then can you look at that, or there's some examples you can give, if you wanted to say discuss, could you give an example?
Read that part again.
Yeah, read that again,
The
where you were directing me to discuss.
reorganize the paper to place all those problems in the initial section. Then create a second section that explains the Amadeus program as the solution. In this section also include the benefits of Amadeus, such as improved sales. Sorry, I just read it wrong.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, because that's more directive. You're telling them to talk about improving the sales. Yeah. And that gives them a focus of what they need to do. They need to talk about sales.
Hey Kathy, I'm looking at your question. Do the issues have to be separated? Can you tell me more what you mean?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because I was having a hard time hearing you, so I was putting on my earphones. Okay, what I meant was, did he have to like talk about the Saudi Arabia issues first and then the Amadeus second? That's what I meant, when I said, do they have to be separated?
Well, the Amadeus is the solution to the problem. Yeah. So I think, separating them out because the Amadeus is the solution, so that would come in the later bit.
And I have the benefit of working with this class and look at is a problem solution format, and there's a really set form, and you do provide the solution in the latter half. You have to lay out what the problem is to convince people you have a problem, or you can convince them they need to adopt some solution. So
Okay, that's what I didn't understand. Okay.
I just tell my students, there are some basic organizational patterns. Write these down because you're going to need these later on in life. Okay. Organizational pattern number 1, problem solution, topical, chronological, spatial. Like, take this in your English class, and that probably horrifies people.
I mean, there are common organizational patterns.
Let's do this.
They just don't work all the time for everything. That's you have to be careful not to treat them as formulas.
As you're developing your writing, especially for our non-natives, prescriptive stuff like that is very helpful.
It is. It's tangible for them, and then they are able to follow and produce. Something that I kind of added also was, I feel like the intro doesn't set us up for problem solution, and so part of my directive was to make it clear in your introduction what the problem and solution is that you're going to address in the paper. I mean, they have a pretty good start there under the reservation system to like giving us an idea of the topic, but and I don't know if you feel like that's too formulaic, but I would like to see them touch on that at the intro. Yeah, this is how
Like provide some like scaffolding for the argument, right? The rest of this report's going to do X, Y, and Z. So the funny thing
Or
about
they
that
supposed to
is,
have that in there.
in technical writing, I would probably insist upon that because that's part of the form. Whereas in my, I don't know, like our upper level English courses, I'd be like, no, that's too clunky. So it's interesting because I think in this case, having that sort of more clear, here's what this report's going to do, is actually just part of this genre. And so I would do it here where I wouldn't do it for something that's
yeah, this was feeling technical to me, and I was feeling like, but he didn't say what he's even trying to accomplish in this paper.
So saying something like, at the beginning, you need to state
what the report is about and what it's going to do for the reader.
See, I just saw the word body and thought, oh, they just punted the introduction. So
Yeah.
Oh, I think they
I
are.
this form would have come with an abstract and an executive summary prior to this. However, this draft, when it came in like with a title page and a couple of other ancillary things, but it did not come with any of that. Right? Because I don't encourage them to write the executive summary before they've done it all.
What do you mean? Don't you write your abstract first?
They love to try to write the introduction first. I'm like, I don't know why you're even, you don't even know what you're arguing. But
You write a placeholder and then ignore it. You don't delete it and write a new one.
Yeah.
But I think this highlights the need for maybe allowing multiple revisions, especially for non-natives, understanding that we can only address so many things at one time in feedback. There are a lot of issues here because also he's underdeveloped everything.
yeah, that was the
Significant.
there are two main things you should work on. And my first one actually was development and not organization.
How did you say it, Amy?
You want to hear?
Yeah.
Okay, I was trying really hard to
Okay.
body you. So I said there are two main things you should work on, colon. One,
Yes.
development, colon.
That is what you sound like.
Nailed the impression.
Give us more information and detail in each section. For example, when you say Amadeus has a mobile app, give us more information about what the app does, how users can use it, and how it helps solve the problems you identify. Is that good? I felt like I was having a Zephra then.
Sure.
I think the interesting thing about this paper too, like knowing what happened afterwards, I feel like if I had gotten distracted and had him really focus on sentence level or even paragraph level organizational issues, he would have never done the more important things, really, because he would have gotten, when really the most important things at this stage were development and rethinking the organizational scheme. So he could see where the holes were in the development.
At some level, I have a hard time seeing development, I think in my own writing actually, until I have the organization fixed. Right? So I go to that kind of that first. Right.
Yeah, I think that's me too. Like I have a really hard time parsing a specific point of the paper into the organization starts working. And then you go, oh, that section. I go, oh, this one.
Well, if you've
Yeah.
laid out the problems, then
Yeah.
you know I need solutions to each of these things, right?
And I don't know if I would be able to say it's not developed enough. There's not enough information in it if because it's so scattered. I have a hard time analyzing whether or not there's actually enough information in it to support the points.
One of the things I know that you don't know is there's not enough information because he's not going to make the page limit. And in
Yes.
fact,
Yeah.
his anxiety about that causes him to put a giant picture of an airplane.
Right,
Very dark picture of an airplane.
Well, the original is
Placeholder until it's fully developed.
yeah, the original picture is actually not bad. It's a color photograph though. which I can't bother with.
Okay, I just read. This is the greatest.
It's also
This
an
photo was
irrelevant.
taken by Saudi staff. He names them.
And
It's-
well,
it's-
yeah, and it's been whited out. And he sent it to me yesterday.
Awesome.
Because you should cite your source.
Yeah. Please.
So the image
Oh,
itself
you
is a
said that was a
sign
good
of his
thing.
own anxiety that he knows needs to argumentation and data, right? I mean, he's got a ton of sources, like the second time around. If he hadn't built this out, I'd probably send him to his sources because he's got sources he's supposed to be using to help him develop content. So
But I think probably, you know, maybe just the content, because he's got clearly some language issues here, right? So he's probably also struggling with understanding the content to be able to fully develop it out. And I think your comment about what you want to hear from him specifically gives him specific things then to read back through the research to look for, to say, okay, I have to find this, I have to find this. And that helps one who is not familiar with the content to be able to extract those things more efficiently than saying, I got to develop this more, but I don't know what I need to find in my research to put in there.
And you can also say something, giving those examples, if you need help thinking of how to develop it, please, or let's set up a meeting. I don't know how the dynamic of how much time you spend with each student, but Yeah, that's
Oh,
so
I make
true.
mine, but
That's something that I've noticed that the English conference people do, like writing conference model. Thinking of that.
yeah, this week is conference week, so that's what I'm doing all day, sitting next to students and talking about their writing.
Wait, you're not trying to shove like last minute information down our throats?
No,
What we do in
that's
social science?
fine.
We're behind people. 5 chapters.
Double time. Strap yourself in, we're gonna fly.
The last 2 weeks for me is always just about their final project.
Yeah.
One of
Even
the-
in a not in writing class, right? If I've got like, I don't know, I don't like the dichotomy between content and writing classes. They're all content classes in a way, but like an upper level course on rhetorical history or whatever that has a distinct intellectual set of knowledge that I have to learn, even in that process. That I know that they have to do because the writing of the paper is part of the content course.
One of the, a woman who teaches at Haskell Indian Nations, I was told, I've been doing a lot of panel on first generation college students. One of the things she talks about is, so she teaches public speaking, but she makes them come in for the same kind of conferences and they watch a videotape. Yeah, a video of the student giving their speech and they talk back and forth about, well, what do you know, you had to do this over again? Did you notice? Okay, one of the things I see is that you didn't have your preview on your introduction. I mean, and so, and she says it so dramatically improves the grades in the course when they just sit down. So we probably should just do this. We probably just need to do this.
I can also give you tips and tricks for how you conference with a lot of students. Because there have been points in my career where I had 4 writing courses at the same time at the end of the semester with 4 students in each class, and I got a conference of all, however many that is, in under 2 weeks. Yeah, 100 students in 2 weeks. I have all kinds of tricks for how you do that.
That would be a really valuable thing to do.
Yeah, maybe we'll do some stuff on like doing Zephra because writing teachers grade and respond to someone's
Yeah.
writing that we learn a lot of tricks that are faster. We're out of time. I just wanted to show you just briefly that we had one more slide because we weren't sure if we would get to this or not because we were sort of talking about like what do you do about conferencing, right? Because we were talking about one of the problems with international students is following oral comments can be very challenging. They can't always keep up. Even our native speakers, I have found if you just talk to them about their paper and no one writes anything down, 30 seconds later they do not know what you said. It's like a student once told me, I said, did you not, like we talked about this in my office, did you not go think about it or write it down? And she said, I just was so nervous that it was like wind in my head. And I was like, oh, that's a great. This was early in my career.
I understand that totally.
You know, she was a freshman and she was so nervous and she didn't know me very well yet. So she spent the whole time being intimidated and scared instead of paying attention. And so I usually have them write stuff down while we talk. But the thing with spoken feedback with international students is that might be a more challenging situation. So Zephra and Amy prepared some tips on this. This is out here. It'll be up on the FCI website as well. So you can come back and review this if you want to think about how to orally conference better with international students as well. And this PowerPoint also has the sources that we use to prepare this and that we reference. All of these are really great sources if you want some more specific examples of how the students and some of the studies they've done about what works and what doesn't work. There's a whole area in the field that studies this, so thankfully we're not on our own.
And where are these? Because I've never found them. I've never found them. But I'd like to bring them up.
So they should get, well, they'll be inside of the presentation because we're filming.
Okay.
And it should be in the deep dive section of innovatepark.org. So you'll be able to look at the video. And I think Jamie normally also attaches my files to it somehow. You can always email me too. The other thing is the folder Google address that I sent to Kathy that's in this chat. So Kathy already has this as well, but I can also send you the link to the folder and you can go straight there and get the materials too.
I would really appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I want to add to your specific. In my speech class, I'm trying to do speech where the students kind of adapt to another culture, right? So I think you looked at, you saw, yeah, part of that. So we talk about different organizational patterns. So problem solution, all these really great linear things that we're all good at. And so we talk about the wave pattern. So Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream is organized in the wave pattern, right? There's a spiral where you start with like bigger ideas, and then you like kind of broad examples, and then you get more and more and more specific as you get to the bottom of the spiral. There's a circular where you just keep coming back. You just come back, right? I am having a mental. I can't come up with examples of these. Have you seen these kinds of work? I mean, I need to be able to give the students more. I need to give them an example because for an American student, this is like really freaky. What do you mean? You know? So do we put an introduction in the circle? Well, no, not the same kind of introduction that you.
See, I can think of some, but they're also high flying. So like the spiral thing, Patricia Williams kind of does that in race. What is that? Alchemy of Race and Rights. Really, really great. But it does the circling kind of thing. It circles quite a lot, but it's
not something I can give to a
it's
freshman.
experimental, right? And so it's kind of outre for even academic writing. So there's probably a lot of the examples I can think of.
Sometimes it's like a novel that's gonna be quite long for
Yes,
them
there's
to
a lot of
write,
short
and they have to read the whole thing to get the idea.
Yeah,
And the
right,
other
you're
thing
right.
is the spiral.
Well, I
something
know,
that
I'm
you
just
don't
not
learn?
exactly all that sure I could do it. I mean, at some level,
For
it's like,
each of
this is
those
not,
lenses.
yeah. So I was
Some of
just
those
wondering if you all.
organizational forms, maybe they don't learn to do that. You know what I mean? I've never written a spiral, even though I've read some.
I think most of Ta-Nehisi Coates is where it's like the circular, now that I'm thinking about it. And those are like Ta-Nehisi Coates, the race commentator.
Spell, please. Dang it.
I'm pretty
It took me
sure
3 years to figure out how to say it.
It's
Something like that. But he's the race commentator for the Atlantic Monthly. Like,
Okay.
he's not gonna be hard to find. But like, he had, yeah, but like, I'm thinking about, he has an essay called Why Blacks Don't Write, Why Blacks Don't Talk About the Civil War. And in that one, if I remember it right, he does. Like, he has this point is like, we're absent in the history, and then here's this point about, and then you're absent in that history.
Yeah,
and then-
yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna bring this down to a close. You guys can all stay and talk to each other if you want to. I just have a student conference coming next week.
All right.
We have hundreds of them, so.
I gotta- Actually, I don't this semester, so mine are very relaxed for once, but yeah, I just don't wanna miss her. So I just wanted to thank you all for coming. This is the last Park Rights event for the year. Yay. Happy about that.
Yes.
As always, if there are topics that are of interest to you about the teaching of writing that you would like a special workshop on, please let me know. I can certainly do all faculty ones, but also if you have something like you want to do a special targeted thing, like I just want to work in like sociology or political science on how to teach writing better in our field, and we want to do a departmental thing, you can let me know, because I can certainly help you like dive deeper into the material on writing in your discipline that would be more specific to you also. So it doesn't always have to be something that would be relevant to everyone. It might just be relevant to a smaller group, and I can do those kinds of things also.
The difference between analysis and partisanship. You deep
That's
dive
really-
into
Actually, talking about what is analysis is
Takes
one of
me a
my
whole
favorite
semester.
things to do, and I spend a lot of time thinking about what
Well,
analysis is and
what
how we
most
teach it
science
in different
is,
fields.
academic discipline.
It might be your
as
gal.
opposed to the talking heads
Um,
and the seance.
Thanks for coming, Kathy.
Hi,
You
Kathy.
do.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye, Betty.
Thanks,
Betty. I've seen your name on like a half a dozen other things, and I just never
Talk to you about the
connected the
right?
view with.
He was on TV again.
Sorry.
Was on TV again?
Yesterday.
Do I just say end meeting?
I made fun of him because he didn't once say that Grimes was screwed.
Yeah.
It's like,